I have a personal task for today's video, which is not to say as many times as I have in my previous videos. So if you're listening, we can keep track together of how many there actually are. Reminds me of something I saw in Florida when I was young. We were driving back, I guess, from Miami to Orlando, and there were a series of a certain kind of billboard, and there was a challenge to count how many there were along the stretch, and if you got the correct number you would win some prize, although of course how could you ever know, because maybe it started a few exits before you even got onto the highway, and then your count would be off. So, but yeah, I'm trying to, in the space when thoughts are coming to me, just let that space be there rather than say so that's a personal challenge to myself and just an exercise I'm doing while creating these videos. There I would have said but with great restraint I withheld. So today's topic is, what does it mean to see ghosts? And I really think in that there's another topic, which is, what does it mean not to see ghosts? What does it mean to deny the reality of ghosts? There's that contrast. And of course, we have the preliminary topic of what is a ghost. So what are ghosts? What does Jackson mean by ghosts? What does it mean to see them? And what does it mean not to see them? And in the course of this video, I want to talk about how it's actually a political choice to believe in ghosts or not to believe in ghosts. This may sound like kind of an odd topic to you, and your first reaction may be, surely Jackson doesn't believe in ghosts. Surely he doesn't believe in that sort of hullabaloo. My first point would be, I believe in way weirder things than that, so if you know me to any intimate degree at all, that shouldn't surprise you. And my second point would be, the way in which I believe in ghosts encompasses something that I think everyone can get behind, or that others are subject to whether or not they believe in it. And so I want to get that across in this video. I spoke of this in an earlier video, but often I want to take concepts that seem mystical or outside the norm and normalize them, bring them into a language where people realize, oh yeah, I'm already doing that, whether or not I would have put it in those terms. So, a similar thing is going on here, and if all you take away from it is Jackson is a weirdo who believes in ghosts, well, that's fine, because again, I believe in stranger things than that, and more of them will come out in time as I continue to make videos like this and share myself in other ways. By the way, I don't think I've said a single time yet, so great mental fortitude. I am restraining the impulse. So, first question, what is the meaning of ghosts? What are ghosts? In the metaphorical structure, a ghost is something haunting us. from the past necessarily. We say we are haunted or that ghosts perform haunting. I think I remember seeing a cartoon at one point where ghosts were talking about going a haunting, like it was a recreational activity they were going to do. If you remember what that is that I'm referring to, you can type it in the comments or something, because it's not coming to me. So, a ghost is a voice from the past entering the present. Someone was killed, usually in the past, and that person's memory or the truth of their death is lingering in the present and is visiting those of us who live in the present. This is depicted in many films, some of which I love. Some films I'm thinking of are The Sixth Sense. I think it's one of the best written films of all time. It's just every beat comes together perfectly. The Others, beautiful film as well. And Casper, of course, came to mind as I was talking about this. Though I haven't watched Casper in a long time, I don't know if it's good. Probably it's not good. I thought it was good when I was a kid, which usually proves the opposite. So, in all of these films, something bad happened to the ghosts in the past. The way in which they died was unjust. And they want to bring that message to people in the present. We say the ghost has unfinished business here on Earth. There's also the film Ghost, Patrick Swayze, who not only has to protect his girlfriend in the present, but also has to communicate to her that there was a deeper plot in how he died. So the ghost has some form of message like that to deliver. That's part of the ghost's metaphorical structure. Something else is the ghost comes up from the depths. The ghost is associated with darkness. If you think about one of the films I mentioned, The Others, and if you haven't seen it, I won't really spoil anything about it, but the majority of The Others takes place in darkness. The shutters of the house are closed. And that is the environment of the ghost. Right? We get spooked at night. There are scenes in films, and I'm sure people have had experiences in their lives where you see ghosts during the day. In fact, I remember something like that happening to me when I was young. I remember telling my mom that I had seen two people sitting on her bed, dressed in funereal attire. A man was wearing a suit and a woman was wearing a dark dress. And that was during the day that I had seen that, and it turned out that the previous occupants of the house had been a couple who lost a child. So there was some coherence to what I had seen. Maybe it was this couple mourning their lost child. So things like that can happen during the day, but more often the atmosphere of the ghost is nightly, is darkness. This too, I think, is significant because not only does the ghost hail from the past, but the ghost hails from the unconscious. The ghost represents that which we have tried to forget. So, two things I've said about the ghost so far. One, it's a visitation from the past into the present. Two, it's a message from the unconscious, because it's something we've tried to repress. And sirens and police vehicles always go by when I'm doing these videos. I don't know if it's an omen, like every time I make one of these videos someone has a horrible accident or something like that. Or maybe it's happening all the time and it's only that I'm more keen to notice it when I'm trying to perform something, when I'm trying to really hold intentional space. Isn't that an interesting thought? How common are these sorts of crises that stand out to us only when we're trying to do something important, quote unquote. The rest of the time we don't notice them. So, I was speaking about how, one, the ghost hails from the past, and two, it carries a message from the unconscious. A byproduct of that is that the ghost is associated with guilt. Often in stories like this, the ghost is about oneself having done something which one regrets or has tried to forget, and the ghost bringing that to attention. Another example that comes to mind is Poltergeist. It's not really a main element of the plot in my remembering, but I do think it's said in that film that the house is situated on a Native American burial ground, and toward the end of the film we see skeletons of the Native Americans emerging from this sort of earthly stew and like walking toward the white characters. So there's this guilt of something I have done, even by implication, that I don't want to be a part of my present reality, and it is coming back to haunt me. So, from the unconscious, and usually the emotional blockage, the emotion to be processed is guilt. Also from films and stories like these, and from the general metaphorical structure of the ghost, we have some knowledge about how to resolve the ghost's anguish. If in the present I am being haunted by the past, and that's what the ghost represents, then resolving the ghost's emotional toll means coming into the present. It means letting go of the past and being free in the present, in order that I can embrace the future as it arises each moment, being unshackled from the past. That is the gift of facing and meeting the ghost. Had a really good coffee this morning, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but my burp tasted like the coffee, so some memories from the past are pleasant. So, from these films, we know how to do that. We know how to meet and address the ghost as well. Of the films I've mentioned so far, Sixth Sense is the one that most greatly demonstrates this. Cole, who is the main character, is explicitly told by, I wanted to say Robin Williams, but of course it's Bruce Willis. There's my first I think. He's told by Bruce Willis to simply sit and listen to the ghosts. Just hear what they have to say to you. And thus, Cole becomes a deliverer of the ghosts from their from their unresolved burdens. This young girl shows Cole that she was in fact poisoned by her mother, that her mother has Munchausen syndrome, and Cole is able to bring some measure of justice to the filial situation through telling this young girl's unknown or stifled story. So, this act of doing something for the ghost is an extreme, but more simply, just listening to the ghost is sufficient to dissolve the ghost's presence. Later in the film, the very end of the film, we see Cole just talking to a woman, a ghost, in the dressing room of his school theater. And I'm not sure he has to do anything for this woman. She was burned in a fire at the school. She just wants to tell Cole her story. The ghost just wants to be known, to be seen. That's why it appears to us. And so, a way of summarizing this section, this kind of technique for dealing with ghosts, is we give our presence to the ghost, which is an emblem of the past, and through this our gift is the present moment. It's the renewal of the present moment because an aspect of the past is put to rest. So my presence is the key to the present in an odd way. It's the gift of space for the past. Three things about ghosts. They are a visitation from the past to the present. They hail from the unconscious and usually are associated with guilt. And in order to make them go away, we don't try to shush them, we don't wave around incense or crosses or any of that nonsense. We merely say, hello, I see you, I hear you, I am here with you. We offer that gift of presence to the ghost, and in return, we ourselves get the present moment. We are freed from the past. As I predicted at the beginning, even if upon seeing the topic of this video you thought, whoa, that sounds really crazy, Jackson's really gone off the deep end, which perhaps I have, I think the structure I've laid out now is sensible in a way where everyone will see, I know exactly what he's talking about. I feel that dynamic. I've experienced something like that. In my last video, I analogized heavily to relationships and dynamics in relationships and how to navigate obstacles in relationships. And essentially the technique or the tool I'm talking about here is the same one. Generally speaking, when I reach a point of hardship, a point of tension in a relationship, what's happening is that either my partner, myself, or most often both of us are acting from a ghost in our past. We are seeing and responding to a bleeding into the present of some past occurrence, some past wound. We can frequently project onto our partner something which happened to us when we were very young. In psychology, this can be called generalization. It's been a while since I took psych, so I'm not extra confident in that, but somewhat confident. So, say my father harmed me in some way when I was young, and I'm in a relationship with a male. This is just an example. The qualities of my father that perturbed me might get projected onto that male. And those might be, in actuality, what I'm interfacing with, rather than the male who exists in my present. And the same thing for females or even non-gender specific characteristics. I can project qualities of my mother onto a male partner and vice versa, and everything can become all blended together in the same way that the past can muddy and infect the present when the ghost visits, when the ghost comes calling. So the same sort of thing happens in relationship. We all can detect that. And just as with the dynamic of the ghost, the passage through is about presence. It's about being there in a holistic way for my partner dealing with their past, such that that past occurrence, that past wound, can get its due and be dissipated. Because the more I try to suppress it, combat it, disprove it, the more I'm only going to strengthen it, and it will re-emerge later in more exaggerated form. Again, although on a different topic, I spoke of this dynamic at length in my past video. This choice we often get in relationship about denying or accepting our partner's reality, which if we don't understand that reality, or if we're afraid of its consequences, can represent a kind of surrender. I don't know what's going to happen if I let this person win, quote unquote, in this scenario. But I'm going to do it out of love and trust. It's that move of being present for my partner. Something happened to my partner when she was young that I don't understand and worry I don't have the tools to address. But I'm just going to try. I'm going to go quiet and be there for her with the largeness of my presence, the greatest I can muster, can access. And through that, possibly, the ghost, the wound, will dissolve. Will be put to rest. Will rest in peace, as ghosts do once they've finished their unfinished business. So, there are multiple kinds of ghost. The first is the kind that appears in all the films I was talking about. And this is the phantom. This is the ghost of a person who died, who haunts the individual space. And perhaps they bring something to our reality that we need to know. Like, something horrible happened in this house, and that's why the energy here is weird. That's why you can't fix the sink, no matter how hard you try. So that's the filmic ghost. That can be taken literally as a phenomenon which really exists in the world, or it can be taken as a metaphor for the other kinds of ghost that I'll describe. The second kind is the personal ghost, the wound from the past. So this is what will appear in relationship. In my very first video, I talked about how trauma is what forms the self and gives it an indelible character. And in this framework, every trauma produces a ghost. There are fundamental messages I have to bring to the world and tasks I have to complete, and they are the products of specific wounds I have from very early in my life. Thus, they are always calling to me. They are, in a sense, the source of my energy. The personal ghost, the personal wound. This is the second type of ghost. It's actually associated with purpose, because throughout a lifetime, what I will be called to do is help others to traverse the same kind of trauma that affected and created me. That is how I'll become a teacher, a healer, an artist. My ghost, my wound, is the guide. It unlocks and shows me the specific way in which I, as Jackson, as the individual self, am called to do that. We are all one energy, and I have spoken about that in previous videos, and I'll talk about that again in this one. But on a different level of experience, we are each of us an individual with a specific, unique story, and that story emanates from a ghostly past, a lingering hardship or frustration that wants to be resolved through us. And it is the soul that meets that wound, meets that ghost, helps to dissipate it, and brings forth the gift into the world. So in this way, ghosts are guides. The personal ghost is a guide. I spoke at the beginning of belief in ghosts as being a political choice, or I alluded to this being so, and I said I would explain it later. And look, now the ghost of my past is demanding that I do so in this present. This will function on two levels. The first is the one I'm speaking about now, the personal ghost. But I'll also speak about a different type of ghost in a moment, and this political nature will apply there as well. So why is it political to believe in ghosts, to say that ghosts are real? This begs the converse, which I brought up at the beginning of this video. What does it mean if I say I don't believe in ghosts? We've been speaking of the present and the past as concrete terms. If I say I don't believe in ghosts, the present becomes only what I can see, only what is visible to me. So, let's say I'm in a relationship and my partner is manifesting this kind of challenging behavior as a result of the ghost from their past. I cannot see that past. Thus, it is unreal to me in my present. And if I say ghosts do not exist, I do not give my partner that charity. I say, you are acting unreasonable and I need you to stop. And I become lacking in generosity, lacking in flexibility in my orientation to that partner. ultimately, what will probably happen is one of two things. Either our relationship continues, but my partner comes to believe that they are crazy because they see ghosts that I do not see, or our relationship ends because the partner will be called to pursue someone who will see or meet their ghosts. I suppose there's a third possibility, which is that through inner work or a relationship with a therapist or spiritual teacher or something of that nature, the partner meets their own need to have their ghosts seen. But I fail to do that. And so this holding hands with ghosts becomes something I cannot do. Becomes something my partner and I do not share. An area of non-understanding in our relationship. Now, what else does it mean if I say I don't believe in ghosts? If I hold to this sort of rigid definition that I posed earlier of the present moment of only what I, my individual self, can see? Well, it means that my personal ghosts have such a strong hold over me that I don't even know they're ghosts. That's what it really means. When I say, you are seeing ghosts, you are insane, and I see what's real, that means that my ghosts dominate and characterize my reality so strongly that I've lost the humility of reckoning with my own present and questioning whether it is constituted by ghosts. So humility is a key term there, and is how this declaration of whether or not we believe in ghosts reveals itself as political. To believe in ghosts means I am confident in my views, and at the same time I am open to the possibility that my views are informed by biases or past wounds which exist for me only. This is a more complex view than simply saying that my views are true. Because as I meet and resolve my issues with my personal ghosts, my views will change. My mind may change. Because my present moment will change. It will become less diluted by the ghosts of my personal past. Also, if I have this orientation, I am open to seeing things I had not previously seen through the vehicle of other people's ghosts. That's the second consequence of this. My partner brings up the wound from her past. I take it in wholly, non-judgmentally. My present is transformed, is expanded. As I realize, wow, what I thought the world to be, what I thought the past to be, was limited. So to believe in ghosts is to be humble about one's own view of the present and thus of the past which created it. And it also beckons more openness about the future. Because my future will be co-constructed by my personal story with my personal ghosts and the personal story of everyone else I meet with their ghosts as well. Together, through healing and spaciousness, all of us will come into a newly revitalized and fertile present. That is the humility of believing in ghosts. Rather than saying it means being confident in one's view, but with a check. I think it's more accurate to say it means being authentic about one's view. Like, I see what I see, but I'm open to that field of vision changing. I am open to flexing and flowing throughout time, such that I may be most authentic and most open in my seeing at every moment, as new realities are presented to me. It is being multiplicitous in my approach to reality. So, that is option one. Option two, which is also a political choice, is I don't see ghosts, I see what's real, I see the present, and anyone else who sees something that's not in the present is deluded. As I said earlier, this means that the only ghosts I grant validity are my own. These ghosts rule me, so much so that I don't even realize they're ghosts. This example paves the way to the third type of ghost I want to talk about. We've talked about mythic or filmic ghosts, personal ghosts, and this third type is collective ghosts. This example paves the way because if my present is dominated only by my ghosts, and I see no one else's ghosts but my own, there are two options here. Either I am so wounded by my personal karma / trauma that I don't even realize I'm wounded, or I am so subject to my collective inheritance of ghosts that I see no one else's. This video takes place in the US, and there are many forms of such ghosts in the US. So, in a way, personal ghosts are easier for me to see because I, as an individual being, am differentiated from other beings, and my story is unique. But there are also originary ghosts that pertain to a culture. I'm a white person. I have a cultural inheritance of the Protestant work ethic, and before that, of a kind of wound which I think is unique to the culture of the United States. This is the wound of the Founding Fathers rebelling against their overseers in the form of the British through the Revolutionary War. This is a filial wound, an intergenerational wound. This is the wound of the youth saying, "We will not submit to the elders' rule," and overthrowing those elders. This spawns creativity and individualism and innovation, which are so much the lifeblood of this country that, again, we may not even realize they're operating. This is the way in which we can be said, in which we can say, in which it can be said, I suppose I meant to say, that a dynamic like this is a form of ghost. It is the stew in which we swim. So, I in my life may have a tenuous relationship with authority and may feel the need to break through and demonstrate my originality and uniqueness in the face of authority. This is the voice of a collective ghost. This is something inherited in the blood. Hundreds of years ago, a son, metaphorically, rebelled against a father, metaphorically. And again, in this country we repeat this. The youth denigrate and cast aside the elders. The elders' wisdom is lost, deemed inessential or stale by the youth, and the youth invent new paradigms, only to find later that they fall victim to the same calcification that snatched away their elders. This is a collective ghost. This is something being renewed each generation without our realizing it. Thus we are haunted. Now, I brought this up as a segue under the guise of it's being a political choice not to believe in ghosts. So, if I take individualism and capitalism and innovation as inarguable goods, I am so subject to this collective ghost that I have described, which is really the white settler European ghost, that I don't even see it as a ghost. It steers my consciousness without my realizing it. And through this domination by the ghost, I may call people who do not submit to this work ethic lazy, or if they do not succeed within our framework, I may seek to blame them for not taking proper individual responsibility. Because that is my ghost, my wound, that I project onto the other. It constitutes my world. The need to prove myself against a metaphorical or symbolic father who has abandoned me. There are, of course, many other ghosts across this land and in this world. There are Native and African American ghosts in this land, which tell of subjugation and of ripping the tree from its roots. These sorts of violence, gagging one's mouth, preventing them from speaking their own truth, fragmenting solidarity. Cultural lostness due to being systematically disenfranchised, ripped away from one's people or one's truth. Number 2 maybe was just there. I've been reading recently in graduate school and thus being reminded of the history of Native Americans in boarding school, which is a history of intentional erasure of language and culture, which are two things that carry the spirit of a people. So we are haunted in this land by the ghost of that spirit. More widely, it's taught in the US that white people enslaved blacks, and thus African Americans were forcefully and violently separated from their symbolic mother/father, which is Africa. And forced to work without pay under the threat of violence and death, which inculcates a kind of bitterness which is not easily overcome. Again, if I fully and wholly submit to the Protestant work ethic, the radical individualism, which are my culture's own wound, the wailing of my collective ghosts, then I won't see these realities of African and Native Americans, just to give two examples, because there are plenty of other people in this country and in this world who have had things like this done to them and worse. I won't see these ghosts, and I will simply say to these people, why don't you hop aboard the train? We're going to such a great place. Why don't you align with the system? This is the danger and the political choice of saying that I don't believe in ghosts. All it means is that my ghosts rule me. Thus I have a monolithic, a narrow reality, rather than a pluralistic one. So I gave two examples of sources of collective ghost, other than the European sort of rebellion against the cultural father ghost, which I think births much of the culture wars we have in the US and the push for progress against the drawn to and attachment to the past. And again, the individualism, the need for innovation. Innovation, remember, is often the reinvention of the wheel. The youth doesn't see that because it needs to break away from the past. That's the wound. So, I've spoken about these three together. Another one that I want to give voice to before ending the video, well, I think I'll do two more, is women of all races who've been systematically and continuously disenfranchised. And, like the other examples I mentioned, violently suppressed. This example aligns importantly with the overall notion or theme of ghosts through the diagnosis of hysteria, which was mainstream until, I want to say until the 60s. Hysteria is exactly what I was talking about earlier as a negative potential in relationship. Hysteria means I do not see the source of your feelings. I deny the reality of your ghost. Therefore, I am sane, you are crazy. And I'm going to drug you or throw you into an institution. And what was the source of hysteria, it's fairly clear now. Not having power, not having autonomy, not being able to express oneself sexually. That would drive one crazy. All the more so because one is told that one already is crazy merely for feeling, for expressing these rumblings. So this is another wound, another collective ghost. And the more we open to and meet and resolve our personal ghosts through presence, the more we become open to collective ghosts, to the ghosts of others, because we have more presence to give. And so others start to reveal themselves. Another is the land in general in this country. The land cries out to us for our presence, for our care. You can feel this if you walk around a public strip, a city, and look at the quality of the grass in the midst of the sidewalks. If you're in a city where you're fortunate even to have that, it doesn't look well to me. Perhaps it's just that I've become able to see what was always there. I don't know if it's actually changed in my lifetime, but the soil does not look healthy or happy. It begs for attention. The same is true of trees that you can see in cities. They are literally truncated, either systematically chopped down, chopped clean, because they were troubling a neighboring house's foundation or something like that, or sheared off at the branches because they would have been too dangerous, would have hung over a street and potentially damaged passing cars, things like that. And so you see these sort of dismembered carcasses of what had been, of what could be. And with this seeing comes a greater remembrance, a remembrance beyond physically perceptible data, which is what must have once been on this land before the land was paved over. The vastness of human conquest reveals itself through this quiet whimpering of the land, the buds trapped underneath the asphalt which have died. If you ever see sidewalk pavement taken off so that the sidewalk can be repaved, you will know this. You will see flat brown earth on the surface of which everything has died. And so only the ghosts remain. So, I have said a lot during this video, and who knows, I might come in under the wire here. This is potentially my longest video, or it'll be about Tide. I've talked about the metaphorical structure of the ghost, and how the ghost is a visitation from the past, hails from the unconscious, is usually associated with guilt, and is resolved through presence, through care, through listening. And that through addressing the needs of the ghost, we ourselves gain the gift of the present, come more fully into the present. The present is complicated because it admits of further perspectives. Our own perspective becomes less opaque. I've spoken of kinds of ghost, the filmic, which I really think is a metaphor for the other two, the personal. Personal means my individual wound, and the collective. Once I begin to meet and address my personal wounds, and my window onto the present is so clarified, I become able to more clearly see and more openly face and embrace, more openly hold the collective wounds, the collective ghosts. And I am the inheritor of some of those, and others have inherited other ghosts. And I can be there for them and, again, complicate my reality through diffusing those myriad, those diverse ghosts. I want to leave this video with one final notion. And I hope it to be an incentivizing promise. In my first video, I spoke of oneness, peace, and love as the base reality. I spoke of the universal truth that there is one soul that lives in all beings. That includes all races, all genders, all nationalities, all ages, and also all species. Animal, human, which by the way is not a distinction I believe in, and vegetative, which also, I mean, yeah, all these distinctions dissolve when you really feel things in this way. If ghosts represent a voice from the past, oneness represents the voice of the future. Perhaps a truer way of saying it is that the voice of oneness is timeless. It was the reality before we were born, that we were all one consciousness. Even in the midst of the chaos and delusion of our lives, oneness remains the reality. And when we die, we will return to this oneness. Thus, it spans the entirety of the life and beyond it. It is not so much of the future as it is of eternity. Nevertheless, I label oneness of the future because in our present, not everyone can meet or access it, nor does everyone want to. It is easier for me to access this field of oneness given the relative lightness of the wounds I received in my life and the gift of success I've had with meeting and resolving them. I say gift because our ability to meet and address ghosts necessitates a presence larger than ourselves. It's a collective enterprise. I've had therapists, I've had spiritual teachers, I've had great friends, family members, companions who have been able to see me and be there for and hold my ghosts, such that they've dissolved. That is a stroke of luck. Once we know deep spiritual truths, once we know compassion, we know that this sequential freedom is not something we can achieve alone. That myth, which I alluded to earlier, the myth of individual responsibility, dies in us. It dies in us and does not have a ghost. It is laid to rest and said goodbye to. It is easier for me to access the field of oneness because of my relative placement in life. I have been extremely lucky in my life, and I'll leave it up to you to determine what I mean by that. Probably any guess you take will be correct. Not all are so fortunate. Most are not. Thus, at present, oneness remains this inaccessible future. Oneness, paradoxically, is exclusive. Not everyone can access it, not everyone wants to access it. Say I am Native American in this culture. Why do I want to merge with, to consider myself synonymous with, the white man who has stripped my culture of its vitality and relegated me to the least desirable lands? Thus, oneness is unevenly distributed. At present is a scarce resource, just like so many others in our world. And so, if you want to spread these values that I hold so highly in my life, so dearly, that I believe to be the apex of our purpose here, values such as peace and love, then what must you do? You must believe in ghosts. So that you can hold presence for the needs of those currently barred from oneness. There are many acceptable, plausible reasons not to be a part of or to desire such a thing. Can we be there for that person too? The angry person, the disaffected person, the confused person, even the person outright labeled and cast away as insane by our society, quote unquote insane. Can we be there for that person too? The schizophrenic, they really see ghosts. For them, ghosts aren't a metaphor. Can we trouble our unified reality by embracing the reality of that person too? This is the paradox of arriving at heaven on earth, which is a sort of eternal, a boundless present. It requires authentic engagement with every aspect of the past. And that is why this time that we live in now is so tumultuous. It is rife with ghosts, begging to be heard, seen, listened to. And many of them with unfinished business, begging not just for presence, but for action. Can we meet that as well? Reality is a far stranger thing than most of us were raised believing. And that is because every aspect of reality is absolutely true. Every emotion is 100% valid. Every perspective, every opinion is 100% correct, even where they appear to negate one another. How can we navigate such a world? This is the question that invites us to presence. So, I don't really have anything more to say in this video, so I'll just leave you to sit with and do what you may do. And as always, I hope that you have a blessed time, and I wish you the best in all things. Thank you.